RC from the Mountaintop Joiner Shop here. When I started my YouTube channel in the not so distant past, I posted a video about this tool cabinet, the inspirations that prompted me to build it, the design influences for it, and how the build came together over a period of a few years. In the comments for that video and elsewhere, I've got several requests to go into greater detail, to give an overview of each of the tool holders in the cabinet as well as the tools they hold. Not only would it be a tour of the tool cabinet itself, it'd also be an inventory of the hand tools it contains. That's what this video series, that's right, series, will be about. I'll be covering everything you see here behind me in great detail, and I'll do so in easily digestible sections that make for convenient, leisurely consumption. A lot of people have a fetish for a fancy tool cabinet. I'm certainly one of them, that's why I built one. If you're one of those people too, you might want to stick around. There'll be plenty here to feast your eyes on, and a healthy dose of tool talk to go with it. Alright, so in this episode what I think I'm going to be doing is going over everything that's on the floor of the main cabinet here. That would include the plane till, the saw till, as well as the stuff that's adjacent to it. And I'm going to start with the plane till, and then I'm going to start with it empty, so you can see what it looks like empty. And then I'm going to fill it up with the tools that fit in it, and I'm going to tell you why I chose to put those tools in my cabinet. So first things first, I'm going to start with the biggest plane that goes in my plane till, and that is this guy, my Veritas jointer plane, bevel up jointer plane. This is the first new plane that I ever purchased when I first got into hand tool woodworking. I started out with an old Stanley No. 5 that was given to me, and this is the first plane of new manufacture that I purchased. And you'll see a lot of Veritas tools in my tool cabinet. I'm a big fan of their stuff. They apply kind of modern manufacturing techniques to what is an old tradition. And then in the end, you get a tool that works really well out of the box and doesn't cost an outrageous sum of money. So I'm a big fan of Veritas. Be prepared to see a lot of it. So that's going to fit in this tall section, and you'll notice that there is a recess behind it. I figured there's so much room under the sole of this plane, I may as well make use of it, so I put some joiner plane accessories in there. So I'll plop those in first. So this is a jointer fence that attaches to the side of the plane, and that allows me to joint longboards square, or edge joint longboards square. It's a pretty handy tool when you don't have a power jointer in your shop. And drop that in there. I have a couple of accessory blades for it. This one is the toothed blade. This is nice for planing down gnarly woods that have reversing grain and such. I actually used this to level my workbench top when I first got that built because it is a quarter San Sapele top, and the grain was kind of running in both directions and interlocking and all that. So I was able to plane a little bit smoother by starting out with a toothed blade and then finishing up with like a smoothing plane blade or something. And that fits right in here onto these kind of Sapele infilled brass plugs that are underneath here. And you'll see there's a little hole that matches up with the hole in the blade, so I can fit my finger in there and get it in and out. This blade here is more of a high angle blade. This one is, I think, honed at about 38 degrees. And the blade that's currently in the jointer plane is about 30 degrees, which is what I use most of the time. But again, if I have kind of an unruly grain, I'll go to this high angle blade as well. So plop that in there. So everything in the plane till kind of leans towards the back of the cabinet, and there's a little heel down here that I've lined with leather to kind of soften the blow. And I just kind of drop it in there like that. You'll see I've got kind of opened up this side of this a little bit to kind of ease placing it in there. So the next one I'm going to do is my jack plane. Eventually, I kind of tired of how wonky my old Stanley No. 5 would get from time to time. So I replaced that one with one of new manufacture. And the one I picked in this case is actually a Clifton. So this is a Clifton No. 5. And one of the reasons I picked it is just look at it. It's dead sexy. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous No. 5 hand plane. Now, one thing about it that's quite different from my old Stanley is the heft. This thing is a beast. It is so heavy. So yes, I do wish it was a little bit lighter. It's a really pretty plane, and this is one of the only bevel down planes that I actually have in my tool chest. I think for No. 5 that I'm going to be using in part to flatten boards and like traverse across the grain, take big chunks out. That kind of bevel down is kind of nice for that. So that is my Clifton No. 5. Next one is going to be the Veritas Bevel Up Smoothing Plane. This one has a high angle blade in it almost all the time. Again, I hone that at about 38 degrees if I recall correctly. But this guy is awesome. It can handle almost anything if the blade is really sharp and you are able to push it through the grain, because it can get hard to push when you have a high angle on it. But that is my Veritas smoothing plane. Next is an old vintage plane, and this is one of the few vintage planes that I still have in my tool chest. And the reason for that is you don't see a lot of compass planes of new manufacture out there, and the ones that you do see are not the best quality, to say the least. There was a time when I heard that Lie-Nielsen was actually working on a new version, a modern version of the old Stanley 113 compass plane, and to best of my knowledge, nothing came from that. I don't know if that's just like a running joke at Lie-Nielsen that they're working on one and then they never put it out, but that was like 2015 when I was told that. Still don't see a new compass plane anywhere. And I don't see Veritas doing one either. But this, given all of the inside curves that I do, like cloud lifts on the underside of aprons and whatnot, it's a plane that I use a lot for that. And it would be hard to do what I do without it, honestly. But so yeah, that's my Stanley compass plane. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with what a compass plane is, it is a plane with a flexible sole that allows you to smooth out curves. And not a lot of people have one of these because, again, nobody makes a new one that's worth anything. But that's my compass plane. And you'll see that each of these has a cutout that's designed to kind of fit the heel of the plane. And underneath them, right where the mouth of the plane is a dado here that I've infilled with brass, but it's recessed a little bit. So even if I forget to draw the blade back so it doesn't project out the bottom of the plane, it won't ding up the plane tilt. So now I'm over here in this kind of deepest, darkest corner of the tool chest. This is where I actually put my shooting board plane. And the one that I have is this Lie-Nielsen number 51R. R, I presume, means right-handed. And it's a big beast of a plane, and of course it's got that 90-degree angle on the sole of it. So I chose to put that right in the corner of the cabinet, and there's just a little notch in the bottom there that grabs the bottom of the plane. I hold it by the frog, and I'm just going to drop it in there like that, and then I have a little toggle right there. And when I close the toggle, you'll notice that it reveals a little Sapele infilled brass plug right there. And that's that. And in front of that, I have my Veritas plow plane. That's one of my favorite joinery planes to use, probably one of my favorite planes to use, period. This is a great plow plane. That just goes into a groove or rabbet that's underneath here, and it's kind of decorated a little bit with some sapele and some curly maple and some ebonized walnut. Behind here I actually have the wide blade holder for that plane, and I took advantage of the fact that this has the threaded screw on it. So basically where the posts for the plane go here is where I fit over these Sapele infilled brass plugs, and I actually have a captive nut on the back side of that holder that I can actually thread that nut right onto. And then in this spot right between the shooting board plane and my plow plane, I drop my mallet. So this is a Wood is Good round mallet. It is a 12 ounce, and this thing is awesome. I use it for all of my pounding with chisel work, and I think it's a good weight for that purpose. And I have just used it for years and years and years and pounded the heck out of it, and it doesn't look all that much worse for the wear. This is a good choice if you're looking for a mallet. Wood is Good, 12 ounce. Goes right into a kind of a round recess right there in the corner of the cabinet. All right, so now I'm going to talk about the plane till. Now, my plane till isn't anything special in that it shares a lot of construction concepts with other plane tills that I've seen. Basically, you have two walls, you have a dowel kind of running from wall to wall, and that you rest kind of the heel of your saw toad on. And then you have kind of a groove that the saw plate fits into, and that's kind of that. But I did some other things to it. Obviously, there's a lot of decorative things going on here that kind of make it more interesting to look at. But also I have a divider in between each of the saws. Not only does that give the whole sawtill a little bit more structural integrity, I think it looks really cool too. So I'm going to start with the biggest saw. That would be this guy. This is my PAX rip saw. You'll notice that the tote on it is nothing like the tote that it comes with. That's because the tote that it came with is garbage. But I also wanted a tote that fit my hand better and had the aggressive hang angle that I really prefer when I'm sawing. So you'll notice that the handle on this has an angle to it that kind of points towards kind of this part of the tooth line. That's considered a very aggressive hang angle, but that's what I like. So I made my own walnut tote that fit the saw plate, and then it works great. The steel itself is great. It's a breasted saw, meaning that the teeth have a little bit of a curve to them, a little bit of a belly under there. And it's also taper ground, meaning that the upper part of the saw plate is actually a little bit thinner than the bottom part of the plate where the teeth are. So it's good steel, it's just the totes weren't so great. So I made my own. So that one has a walnut tote on it and goes right there. Now, truth be told, since I got a bandsaw, I don't really use this saw all that much anymore. Long rips with a panel saw like this, honestly, are a lot like work. So now I have what I call the Neanderthal's apprentice, i.e. a bandsaw for that kind of thing. And I'll grab the next one. Now this is a saw I do use a lot. This is my PAX crosscut saw. I do all of my cross-cutting to rough length with this guy at a saw bench as opposed to using a sliding compound miter saw or table saw. I don't own either of those two tools. And if you want to learn more about my saw bench, I did do a video on that. It's quite a unique design, and I'll leave a link in the description about that. But yeah, this has a tote on it that I made as well. And again, it has the aggressive hang angle that I like. It fits my hand better, and it's made of maple. And you might start to notice a theme as we move along here. All right, so I'll grab the next one. This one, the teeth are actually cut to have kind of a hybrid tooth geometry. So ostensibly it will work just as well cutting rip as crosscut, or at least be a good balance between those two operations. It's a shorter panel saw. It's designed to fit into a more mobile tool chest. I thought maybe someday I'll make something like a Dutch tool chest that I can go mobile with, and then I put this saw in it. I haven't really done that. I don't really go mobile. I don't really like to go mobile. So, but I have the saw. And this one came with a tote that I think was broken or missing. I can't remember now. It's a very old saw plate. It's an old Diston D8 saw plate. But again, I made my own tote for that. And this one's out of cherry because it's a hybrid filing. So put that away and grab the next saw. This one's a beast. This is my sash saw, or some people will call it a tenon saw, but with a plate that's this long and this deep, I think sash might be more appropriate. And because it is a rip tooth filing, I chose to have a walnut tote put on that one. And this one's made by Windsor Saw. This is out of Colorado Springs, if I recall correctly. So it has kind of a local origin, and of course, when I can shop locally and be happy with the product, I'm happy to do so. It's 11 points per inch, and it's been a pretty good saw for me. When I first got it, it had some issues, and I had to have somebody kind of go over it and straighten it out for me. At first, I was like, why do I keep cutting to the left? All my other saws, I have no problem cutting a straight line, and with this one, I had problems. But those have since been straightened out. And now I can cut big old tenons or whatever with this guy much more easily. That goes right there. And you can see that the sawtail is graduated in height to kind of jive with the length of the saw. Next one is another saw that I use a lot. This is my carcass saw. Again, this is by Windsor Saw. This one is 13 points per inch, and it's filed crosscut. And as such, it has a maple handle on it. And yeah, of all the hand saws I use, I probably use this one and this other panel crosscut the most. Couldn't do what I do without them. That guy right there. And, oh, this one's the crown jewel of my saws. This is a custom Bonts Sawworks dovetail saw that I had made to match kind of the relaxed hang angle that I like, because I like to saw up high in a bench-on-bench that has a Moxon vise on it. And I've done a video about that as well. If you're curious about that, I'll leave a link in the description for that one too. But this is, of course, a rip cut, and as such has a walnut tote on it. And it fits my hand beautifully. The saw itself is absolutely gorgeous, and it cuts about as good as it looks. Love this saw. I do all my dovetailing by hand, and I do it with this guy. All right, and then the last one is a shop-made saw. This funny looking thing is a stair saw, or what some people call a dado saw. Either one works. And basically what you have is saw nuts that you can loosen up, and you can move your saw plate in and out of the body of the saw. And so you can actually use this as a depth stop. So when the body of the saw bottoms out in the kerf, well, then you know you're done, and you don't run the risk of overcutting your lines. So when I cut things like, when I was hand cutting dados a lot, I would use this. I also cut the shoulders of end rabbits with this guy as well. And one of the cute things I did with it, with its novel shape, is actually to put this mast on it. So you can actually look down sight down the mast and see pretty easily if you're sawing vertical or not. So that's kind of a nice feature of it. Unfortunately, when I got right to the end of building this thing, I actually cut the saw slot all kinds of crooked, and that was unfortunate. But with my little mast that I stick up, I know visually just how much to lean this to kind of compensate for that, and I'm still able to cut perfectly vertical walls with this, or kerfs with this, just by kind of eyeballing that mast. So kind of a neat design there. I actually have other blades for this. I have a rip blade for it as well, but I use a cross-cut blade in it like 95% of the time. And that just fits right down there. And that last spot on my sawtill. And it's pretty easy to just run over here and grab your saw and go take care of business and drop it back in there. Pretty user-friendly. All right, so now I'm over here in this corner of the cabinet, and this is where I keep my coping saw and my fret saw, or jeweler's saw. And before I stick those in there, I'm also going to put these bars in here. So these are extensions for my bar gauge. Those go right there. They're something that I was hoping to fit on this door, and kind of ran out of room, and I had this spot here against the wall, so that's where I ended up putting those, and they kind of look cool. And next to that will go my New Concepts fret saw, and next to that, in the opposing direction, will be my New Concepts coping saw. Goes in there like that. And you'll notice underneath here that there's a little kind of case with a drawer in it. So I'm going to pull this guy off. I do have to remove this fret saw to get into this drawer, but that's all I have to do. This just moves out of the way. And in here I have a little kind of hand dovetailed sideways facing drawer with all these graduated shelves in it. And those shelves are actually marked with kind of flush brass plugs. So you see 6 plugs there, 4 there, 2 there, 1 there. These are all jeweler's blades, and what these brass plugs denote is the gauge. So these are, 6/0, 4/0, 2/0, and single-0 jeweler's blades. And then underneath that, you'll see that I have a little brass kind of toothed emblem there. Those are actually my wood cutting blades for the fret saw. That's where I keep all my blades in case I break one, which I've been known to do, especially with the fret saw. And then I just drop my fret saw right back in there, and we're all good to go. And that little brass knob is actually backed by a little leather pad there, which is kind of a nice decorative flourish. So that is the whole bottom of this tool cabinet. Stick around to see the other sections, including the upper wall and the right and left doors, as well as the base of the cabinet in subsequent videos. Now, if you like what you saw here, please hit like and subscribe. It would help me out a lot. Also hit the little bell icon if you want to be notified anytime I release a new video. And if you didn't like what you saw here, keep it to yourself, pal. Or watch one of my other videos. You might like one of those. Thank you for watching.